So our topic for today is liberating voices through podcasting. We are looking to talk about how you can essentially grow your podcast without losing your soul. Next slide. Who we are. My name is Kwadzo. I'm from the Gold Coast Report. We're a podcast network in Accra, Ghana. And our focus has been building podcasting with a focus on community. And that's the experience I'm looking to share today. And we're also looking to get your opinions, your viewpoints, so that we have a productive discussion. Next slide.
And my name is Barbara. I work for Deutsche Welle Academy, which is the journalism training and media development division of Deutsche Welle, where we work across 60 countries all over the world, from Latin America, Asia, Africa, MENA, Europe. And part of the hats that I'm wearing is heading a podcast training project that we've implemented over the past 4 years. And we've had the pleasure to collaborate with lots of wonderful partners. And that's me in a nutshell.
Awesome. So now this is the part where we get your feedback as an audience. So next slide. So the next question, please hit next. Who is currently making a podcast? Show of hands. Okay, look around. We have some interesting numbers there. The next one, please. Do you already have an idea for a podcast? Anyone? Okay, please look around. And the last question, turn to your neighbor and share why you've come today. It's working. Good. Okay. So we give it like a minute or two, and then we do that. Yeah. Okay, 1 minute to quickly wrap up. Okay. Who wants to share what they learned about their neighbor? Otherwise, I'll pick someone. Okay.
Part of sitting up front. Hi, everyone. My name is Molly. I'm the CEO of Afropods, and I just met Nelson. He's from Juba in South Sudan, and he has a place, I guess I would call it like a community hub and center where they create media and podcasts, and it's called Sinus Hub. And they have over 600 members, and they work with the youth.
Thanks, Molly. Anyone else wants to share what they learned about their neighbor? Anyone else? I will just walk to someone, and if I stop, then...
Good morning, everybody. My name is Valerie. I am from Kenya. I work at the Nation Media Group. I have just met my neighbor, Daniel Ondieki. He's a podcaster, and he launched his podcast last year. So he's here to learn more about scaling it and making it bigger. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Valerie. And when we have time, definitely go around, meet more people, because I think we all have very interesting stories and reasons why we're here. Can we get next, please? So we are going to take it back to the very beginning. Why podcast? The very first thing is it has a very low barrier to entry. In terms of the equipment you need, you could pretty much start with your smartphone, because right now, all smartphones have very decent microphones. So low barrier to entry. The next one is there's flexibility in the style and structure. How I would want to approach a story is going to be completely different from how Molly would want to approach a story. And podcasting gives us the space to essentially tackle whatever story or subject matter we want to talk about in our own format. So it gives you essentially that creative license to bring your whole self and your whole creative depth to a story. The next one is allows you to explore stories in depth. You could take a single topic, have a 5-episode deep dive into that, or you could have one episode. And if you're insane enough, have that be a 3-hour episode where you're just drilling into the information of the story. Podcasting essentially allows you to do that, which is difficult with other media content in terms of video, articles. It's much more difficult, but with podcasts, you are able to essentially nail that. And the last thing is it gives you a really interesting audience profile, because once your content is out there on the internet, the digital space, you have no idea who's going to connect with you. You have no idea who's going to find your story. You have no idea the community that you're going to be able to build from the podcast that you're putting out there. Next slide. So with this slide, we are essentially charting the number of podcast listenership worldwide. And Barbara and I had a conversation yesterday about how this number is pretty much double at this point, because we start to factor in video podcasts on YouTube and you start including the viewership as well. It's a very, very huge audience. People are looking for content that inspires them. People are looking for content that they can connect with. People are looking to learn, looking to explore. And podcast allows for that very easy connection in terms of understanding the subject material, understanding a topic, or just being exposed to things that are different from your normal everyday today. Next slide. And Barbara is going to talk some more.
Yes. So before we delve into the practical part of the workshop, I just wanted to give you a little bit of background about the training tools that we have developed at Deutsche Welle Academy collaboratively with our partners. So as a journalism training and media development division of Deutsche Welle, we've seen over the last couple of years an increased interest in all the 60 countries that we work with, across all the regions that we work in, interest in podcasting and podcast training. And this is why we've partnered with podcasters, with regional expertise, with learning designers, with media partners that we work with to collaboratively start developing training modules, a whole portfolio. So we started with introductory workshops and then gradually built also advanced modules around analytics, monetization, community engagement. But what we also very quickly realized is that in addition to the workshops, it's super important to have tools for these workshops. And that's where we can move to the next slide. And this is why we partnered with a Swedish training organization called MethodKit, which has over the past 10 years specialized in mapping shared languages. So they've mapped everything from urban development, diplomacy, disarmament, and we thought it'd be a really interesting idea to map the shared language around podcasting. And so what we did together with MethodKit, we identified 20 podcast experts from all over the world, so from Australia, Cambodia, Philippines, Kenya. Here in Kenya, we work with James Smart from Nation Audio, South Africa, Cameroon, Switzerland, also the US. And we asked all these experts, and you could have been in that position if you're producing a podcast, but we asked them to send us so-called brain dumps. So if you think about podcasting, what are plus minus 60 terms that you have to think about, whether it's in the development, in the format development stage, in the production stage, or in the distribution. And so then we gradually started receiving from these 20 experts their so-called brain dumps. We started then comparing and contrasting, and in an iterative development came up with 63 cards. It's 63 cards that you're going to work with today, and we're actually going to give everyone who is attending this workshop a method kit to take home with. And then what happened was we presented it in London, and very quickly people were asking, what about French? What about Arabic? And because we had already a network, an international network, we were able to quickly scale it up. And over the past year and a half, pretty much on average every 2 weeks, we've added a new language. At the moment, we've got 50 languages. And seeing that we are at the African Media Festival, I must say that we're particularly proud that we have also a lot of African languages. We have Amharic, Oromo, Tigrinya, Somali, Swahili. We have Moré, Chichewa, Wolof, and we're in the process of adding Malgache, Madagascar, Zulu, Kinyarwanda, Lungala. So if there's a language that we haven't covered yet and you're keen and you like the tool at the end of the workshop, come and talk to us. And exactly. But, and actually I have not moved the slides, so we can move the next slide. This is our network, growing network. Here you see the languages. And now we can move to the next slide. And this is, before we delve into the practical part, a short video to give you an intro into the kit. If you can press play.
Have you ever had a great idea for a podcast but didn't know where to start? We've got you covered. We've created a tool to help from the podcast development stage all the way through to production and distribution. It's called MethodKit for Podcasts. It's a deck of 61 cards, and each one focuses on a different aspect of podcasting. The kit can be used in various ways, so let's take a look. A good starting point is to simply lay the cards out and start talking through the different aspects. This will give you a clear overview of what's involved in developing and producing a podcast. Go through the cards and prioritize which ones are most relevant to you right now. A game board can help you organize and rank them according to importance, from low to medium to high priority. This will make it easier to decide what to work on tomorrow, next week, or in a couple of months. A grid is another way to understand what you need to focus on right now. You can place cards along the priority axis depending on how important each card is, from very important to not at all. Then the clarity axis shows if you have a clear idea what you want to do around that card. The grid helps you to understand which areas are still fuzzy and which things are clear enough to be actionable straight away. And if you want to dive deeper, you can use the cards to collect your thoughts, maybe on a wall or a table. If you're working in a team, build on the ideas of others and develop them further. This will help you to sharpen your concept, clarify your vision, and distribute tasks. You can also structure your thoughts by adding rows that represent a specific perspective. In one row, you might focus on analyzing the current situation, while in another, you only look at the next steps. No matter which way you use the kit, here are some general tips. Keep your workspace clean and get rid of anything on it that could distract you. Make sure to document your work. This helps you to take a step back when you get stuck. And speaking of getting stuck, don't spend too much time on one card. There are plenty of other ones that need your attention too, so be sure to spread the love. And that's the kit, a simple but effective tool to help you make your podcast idea a reality. Download the kit and other materials today and take the first steps on your podcasting journey.
Thank you. Can we get the next slide? I think Barbara, I saw you. Okay. And we ourselves have received these cards and we've used them, and in our subsequent shows, we found them very useful because it's a very good breakdown in terms of the components you will need to start a podcast. And to be very honest, I think if anyone interested in anything digital media, it gives you a very good breakdown because just from the pre-production, production, and post-production, it breaks those three segments into very clear steps. Next slide. Okay, so this is the fun part. We are about to all have a little fun exercise. So you should all have name tags, and these are color-coded. So can we have everybody bunch up to their colors? We have red, yellow, there's a purple, there's a blue, and there's a green. So if you are red, please find yourself here. The greens here, purple at the back, greens at the back, and yellows in the middle. Yes, please. Yes, but you come back. It's just a group exercise. Oh, sorry. So reds, greens. So greens front, left.
And anyone who doesn't have a name tag, just join a group.
Yeah. Yeah, good.
Green.
We have reds over here. We have the greens over here. The yellows are in the middle. The purples are this way. And then
the middle is yellow.
Where you are, exactly there. Oh, blues.
We've got one more color, that's true. We've got
Okay, these are blues. Okay. How many purples? Just 3 purples.
Oh, you know what? We can take the blues here to the front.
Okay, blues to the front. We have enough chairs.
What color have you?
Join the purples.
Hi, I'm Jasmine. We landed on the 2 cards of target audience and storytelling. The way we did it was doing the this or that. We just kept holding up the cards and going like, is this or this the priority and went through it like that. And we had a bunch parked, and we ended up saying, knowing who you're making the thing for is the first thing that you should do. And the second is, do you have a good story? Do you have a good story to tell? And how are you telling it? A lot of the other cards kind of play into it. Like if you've got good hosts, do they know how to tell a story? Community engagement goes into knowing your target audience, et cetera, et cetera. And everything else kind of falls under that.
Thank you so much. Team Red.
So we have picked research and storytelling. So when we research, we also are going to research about our target audiences, the kind of topics we are going to cover, and the kind of community we are targeting. So we are going to research that, and the storytelling is very important for us because even if you have a good research and good storytelling, I think people are going to come to your podcast and they are going to watch it, share it. So promotion is not required. Branding is not required. If your research is strong, then even we also discussed about the target audience, but we thought that we'll cover that in research. And we also were very discussing language and tone is very important for us, but that did not beat the storytelling. So yeah, apart from that, we also discussed about the branding thing, but again, we do not want to fail in our podcast. So research is important and storytelling. So even if you have good research, good storytelling, I think other things can be covered easily, like the sponsorship, which was very, I picked the card. The sponsorship was very important, but later on, so we shifted to these two cards. So research and storytelling for this group.
Thank you very much. Purple. Okay.
Okay. So we went with storytelling because, you should be able to tell the story depending on how you've done your research. All of those, the research, the target audience, all of them are things that you're taking into account before you storytell. So storytelling encompasses quite a bit. Promotion, why? Because I believe a lot of us all know a very well-researched podcast that doesn't have an audience because they've not promoted it. So you could have the best podcast, but it's not promoted, so it's not going anywhere. So those are the two for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Team Green.
Good morning, or is it afternoon now? My name is Ginny Lasitze. We had a really tough time. The whole bouquet is essential as far as we're concerned. You're not going to successfully have a podcast without the full bouquet. But what we did is, where do we start first? If you have research, but you don't have the equipment, you don't have a podcast. So your research is great, but nobody's going to see it. So we started with equipment. First, you must have the equipment, and then you must have the host. From the host, everything else will flow. The storytelling, the planning, the research, the sponsorships, everything else which is in this lovely bouquet is going to flow from there. So that's how we really struggled. Comrades could not get away from the tone, the angles, and everything else. But yeah, eventually we all agreed. First, you must have the equipment because it is pointless to have all the other ones without the key things that facilitate the execution of what you're doing. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Team Green. And if you felt that you had a lot of discussions with these cards, we normally for this exercise give out the 63 cards of the whole method kit. So that's more than like 5 times what you had. So I think this was 20 cards maybe, or 20 cards?
21.
Yeah, 21. Okay, so you would have had 3 times more with the whole kit. Just to put a little bit of perspective, if you were having arguments, we could have expanded the arguments even more. Over to you, Kwadzo.
Yeah, so Barbara and I, and with our colleague Julia, we pre-selected these cards because we felt it spoke a bit more clearly to the community focus that we wanted to talk about with regards to podcasts and shows. Thank you so much for participating. Can we have the next slide, please? Okay, so with this bit, we kind of want to focus on the community conversation that we are having. And we are thinking the goal of the podcast is essentially to be the soul of the community. The people that listen to you, your audience, the content they are producing is to be representative of them. And it helps to understand the people who are coming in to listen to you. One of the key things to understand is there's a belonging factor for them. They are not just looking to listen, they want to be a part of something. So given what your subject matter is, there should be an element of connection. I listened to your first episode. Why would I listen to the next episode? Something must be either tugging at my heartstrings or resonating in my mind, or a question that's left unanswered, or you've given me some insights or some revelation. And that's why I would want to check you out again. Focusing on community, we also strongly believe that community is very much an action word. So beyond having them press the play button, what are you doing to have more tangible interactive moments with them? A very simple one could be organizing live events, maybe just a meet and greet, just a way to connect with the audience that's listening to you, because it's helpful sometimes to put a face to a name. And also from a host POV, it's very helpful to know who your audience is, because sometimes it can get very stripped away when you're looking at them as just X number of listens. But when you have a name, a face, you know you have shared interest, it gives you a more tangible connection. In fact, when it comes to podcast production, one of the tricks that people also do is you imagine who your persona is, who are you making the podcast for? And this allows you to move from imagining to actually having a real life person to connect with when you're planning the episodes. And the last thing we want to talk about is interest and identity. Interest gets people interested in a topic, but their shared identity that you build is what gets them staying, a bit related to the belonging factor. And this is why community is super important, because you could just plan a podcast that you are, chasing the numbers and looking to scale up as widely as possible. But then if you have that focus on community, it makes sense to pay attention to who am I doing this for? Am I representative of them? Am I speaking to them? Am I tapping into what their interests and concerns are? And that gives you, we feel, a very even foundation to start your podcast from. Next slide, please. Next button. Could you just hit all of them? Thank you. We had fun with this bit. Yeah. So this is us as GCR thinking through how we've attempted to focus on community. And these are some of our learnings. And at this point of the conversation, if anything comes to mind, any questions, feel free to stop me. So one thing that we've been very curious about and are constantly exploring is, what does it mean to become a third space? We have a studio, we have a space. So for us, live events are slightly easier, but we also have technology. So Twitter Lives, well, now X Spaces Lives, Instagram, it's IG Live, TikTok Lives. These are ways to create a live moment where it's you, the host, or you, the podcast production team, connecting with your audience, having a conversation with you in real time. It could be a structured conversation. It could be, hey, we had this episode, any questions? Or it could be, if my podcast is about news and something just happened, we kind of want to touch on it and see how everybody's feeling. So something for you guys also think about, those who are looking to start podcasting. How do you be a third space so that when things happen, the community kind of wants to, hey, let's go kick it with our friend and talk about this. That's sort of the concept that we are trying to talk about here. The next one is solving the technical need that your community has. Depending on what your show is about, everybody's going to approach this differently. But think of it this way. If we are all in a community and we all have a problem, I should know what that problem is. If there's a way I could leverage my resources and platform to solve it, if not necessarily solve, even attempt to approach and I share that with the community, that's a tangible impact that I'm able to share with the community members because we all kind of have need for that resource. So an example could be, let's say we all live in the same neighborhood and we are having power issues. I am able to find out who our elected representative is, get their email and get their phone number and be like, hey, this is the person to call to voice your complaint and make sure that we get our electricity issue sorted. That's you doing something tangible, taking an actionable step that impacts your community directly. That way, you're also positioning the show, the podcast, the platform as something that is not just part of the community, but also helpful to the audience that you're engaging with constantly. The other thing is prioritizing representation over reach. And this part, it gets a bit tricky because it's a competing interest. You are starting the show, you want to, I think the guys talked about promotion being very important, you as well. You want to reach out. You want to get as many listeners and audience as possible. But you also want to balance that with making sure that, again, if your podcast is focused on community and the audience that you are building, then you are making sure that you are representing them in the best possible light. So what this might mean is sometimes the topics you choose might not necessarily be trending ones, but among your immediate community, they are quite important. And it means that you might not get a large enough listenership for that particular episode, but you're talking about something that you know, hey, this is something that's important to us, and it's good that we're able to share some light on this, spend some time talking about this, and connect with this. The other one, pass the mic. And this is a very easy one to do in terms of getting comments and feedback from your listenership. So you could open your DMs on the socials. You could have an email address where they send you comments. You could have them send you voice notes. The idea is you have taken the very difficult step to start a podcast show. It's very difficult. You have the show, it's uploaded on AfriPods, everything is up and running. How do you get other people to also participate? How do you also shine the spotlight on their needs, give them a platform? Because the really cool thing is, if I'm listening and I know Barbara and I hear her voice on a random podcast that's part of our community, I'm more inclined to keep listening. And I will share with Barbara's friends, and you are growing a network that way. So once you have a show, once you have the mic, essentially look to pass the mic and let other people speak to their experiences in the shared community that you're in. And the last one is being intentional in thinking about what you're doing. We're increasingly in a digital space, and in the next 5 years, your podcast essentially could be archival material in terms of people going back, listen to what you've put out to get a sense of how that community, how that group was thinking / feeling. So it gives you this added layer of responsibility in planning your show because you are not doing this just to produce content, but you're thinking, hey, in the next 10 years, people come back and listen to this. What conversations, what insights, what inputs would I want to have captured in this episode, in this series that is preserved, hopefully, for future generations to engage with? At this point, any questions, any comments from the audience? Otherwise, we move on to the next slide. Going once.
We have something we call the nephelometer.
Nephelometer.
Yes.
Can we hit pause? Thank you. Going once. Going twice. Thank you. So we are going to play a short clip from one of our shows, Sincerely Accra. And this is Entertainment Youth Focus Podcast. As I mentioned, I'm from Accra, Ghana. And the last 2 years, we had an issue with mining and the environment. Some of our water bodies was quite polluted. And we had the youth raising concerns and having a series of protests. And this show invited in some doctors to essentially talk about what that result is for people. And an example of leveraging the platform, passing the mic to talk about issues that are important to the community and the audience. Please press play. Thank you.
We have something we call the nephelometer. Yes.
Nephelometer.
Yes.
That measures the cloudiness of water.
Yeah, that's right. So you're getting your
turbidity.
Yes. So that's the same. The technical term, the turbidity is there. Okay. Yes. So the unit is nephelometric turbidity unit. Yes.
Okay.
And the ideally recommended value is less than 1 NTU.
So one NTU, one cloudiness.
Sort of. Not necessarily, but yeah. And then, but yes, below 4 NTUs, yeah, it's permissible by WHO standards.
Okay.
But anything above 4 NTUs, you start seeing particles in the water. And now this nephelometer, what happens is that when you take your water, the sample of water that you're measuring, so for instance, if you decide to go and take the Galamsey water from River Pra or any of those water bodies, you put a sample in the machine, you close it, and then there's a button you press. Now this machine uses reflection of light. Yes. So you know that if the more cloudy the sample is, the less the light is not going to pass through.
Okay.
Well, yeah, so that is the principle. And this Galamsey water is now 14,000 NTUs. Just last year, the Ghana Water Company said that the value of the Galamsey water was 10,000 NTUs. Now they can't use alum to purify that water anymore. They've switched to polymer, and polymer is used in purifying wastewater.
Oh, now that is
you know where we're getting with this.
That is crazy.
Yes. So it's really terrible.
Waste.
And let me show you. Sorry, I brought some receipts here.
Come on, visual receipts. Show them the receipts.
So this is a visual representation of the NTUs. So you have 0 there, and then you have 5. So between these two, that's less than 4.
4, okay.
Yeah, that's permissible. But this is 400. So I just want the audience to imagine what 14,000 NTUs is.
Thank you. So that's hello. Yeah, so that's just an example of leveraging the platform and passing the mic to the audience to speak to an issue that is pertinent and important to the community. Next slide, please. So for this, we're going to have a group discussion, and we want to answer the question, what's the best way to juggle your own podcast needs with the community needs and sponsor demands? Now, the truth is, your podcast interests and community needs, those are very easy because more often than not, they get aligned. It's when sponsorship demand comes in that we see people struggling with how to align all of them. Anybody wants to have a go at answering this?
Good morning again. I think since we've already dealt with your interests and the community needs, because those ones overlap, the best way to deal with the sponsorship demands is perhaps to find like-minded sponsors. So for instance, if you're doing the water thing, you find a sponsorship which is already in the water world, and you're helping move their interests along with yours. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wants to chime in?
Well, and I think just be extremely transparent about it, that it's a sponsorship, which I think every listener understands that it needs to be funded. So if it doesn't align, just be funny about it or something like that.
Thank you very much. Anyone else from the back?
For me, you just have to know what is your why in terms of, especially for sponsors, and you're telling them. For us, for example, we work on Total News. We produce a lot of podcasts by children, for children. So it's just knowing your why and telling the sponsor, this is our why, this is why we're doing this podcast. Support it. Don't change us. I'll give you an example. We have just released a podcast on child labor done by children. And what we did, we trained those kids on podcasting, and then they produced that podcast. We did not give them a script and everything. We just told the sponsor, what you want, we just want to set up a podcast studio. And what the kids are going to come up with, it is their topic, it is not ours. And luckily, the topic was around child labor, which the sponsor supports elimination of child labor. So just know your why and then get sponsors who can be able to support that. Thank you. Or come to the afternoon session, you'll get more about that.
Definitely come for the afternoon session.
I think it's very important to be transparent about sponsorship because at times when you also need the money, you also need to run the podcast. You want to support the, you need to hire a studio, or sometimes you need to pay for the tickets and all to your guests. So it's very important for me to be very, very, transparent about it. Inform your audience that this segment is sponsored, this company has sponsored, and I do that all the time because and earlier I was very skeptical about it because I used to think that people might start coming and bashing you that you're doing journalism in the name of journalism, you are taking sponsorship and all. But later on I have realized that is from my experience that people really respect that you have taken money and it takes a lot of efforts and to create a content. So yeah, just be transparent about it and also try to inform your audiences about the just flag it up that like there can be risks also if you're using a product or anything like. So yeah, just be transparent and people. Anyways, the companies are doing their advertisements all over everywhere. So why not on your platform because you need to run it. But yeah, be very ethical. Like it's not like you're promoting gambling or something like that. But yeah, if the product is good, I don't think there's anything wrong in promoting that. Just be transparent about it. That's it.
Just because the mic is here, but as I'm rationalizing this thought in my head, it almost feels like I'm selling my soul already. But I'm imagining that sponsorships nowadays in podcasts can be really in your face, kind of. They can take an in-your-face approach. So I'm wondering whether the best way to juggle this would be to incorporate the sponsorship needs into your storytelling so that it's not in the face of your audience so much, but it goes in really smoothly without even them realizing. Maybe like BetterHelp.
Thank you so much. Anybody wants to speak? Otherwise, okay, perfect.
I guess mine sort of aligns with hers because if we know what we're offering, it would be nice to have even like sponsors that align with your values as a podcast. So knowing what you stand for and what storytelling you're doing and finding sponsors that align with that value, I think that's pretty important.
Thank you. And two more.
Hello, can you hear me? There's also the challenge of sometimes your story is not, it's not the trendy thing. So sometimes you can build your own community and your community will be the ones to sponsor you. So with time, building that momentum, eventually the audience or the community that you've created with your podcast end up sponsoring you because they already, they've grown with you and they are very happy to be part of your growth and part of your journey. Because sometimes whatever story you're telling is not necessarily in terms of, like it's like, let's say disability is not a very it's not a good, it doesn't have a selling point. Like a lot of people will tell you, but that is not, they don't have the buying power. So sometimes you can start your podcast and grow with momentum and hopefully the community you've built around you will be the ones to also sponsor you. I've seen that with a lot of African Americans and people abroad and even people here.
Thank you. Last person.
Hello, everyone. Kevin Y. Brown with AfriPods. As far as your own podcast interest, I think it's important when we talk about juggling to pick something that you're actually interested in. So it's something that you'll continue to show up for. When it comes to community, it's very important to engage your community on a consistent basis so that you know what it is that's working and what's not working. And then when it comes to sponsor demands, I think picking sponsors that actually align with what it is that you're doing, but also being very clear about what the KPIs and the deliverables are for the campaign that you're doing. I think those are the way that you juggle it. Then you create a formula for yourself that's repeatable. And then you just continue to do it over and over. And then you create a media kit with your results. And then you go and you shop that. So sometimes you might even have to, or have the opportunity when it comes to sponsorship to go out. Sorry. Let's say there's a product that you love. You can actually pick that product and do a promo for it pro bono. Get the results from your community that are engaged, and then go to the actual company and say, hey, I did this for you. This is something that I did. Can we continue to have this relationship? Can we continue to build together? So those are the ways in which I would go about juggling.
Thanks so much, Kevin. Come again next. Okay, so most of the responses touched on these, and I'll just go through quickly. So at GCR, how we do this is, one, having a podcast compass. And I think someone mentioned this, what's the why? What's the goal of the show? What are you trying to do? More often than not, that would be a very clear, is this a sponsor a good fit or not? It makes a very easy decision. The next is the value and ethics. This is going to be something you decide with by yourself or with your team. What are our no-goes? I had gambling. For some people, that might be alcohol. For others, it might be other associations. You have to decide what your values and ethics are as a podcaster or as a podcasting team. And that leads into the sponsor alignment. You are able to tell if you and the sponsor are on the same page or if they are not. Because the reality is, whoever is paying for something is probably going to be the one who gets their demand. So in that case, it's very unlikely that the sponsor is going to change their policy for you. It's probably going to be you bending to what they are demanding or requesting. And also just accepting that it's also okay to change. The compass you have when you started is probably going to undergo some change, and that's okay too, because there's growth, there's time, there's new information, there's new context. It's just something for you to revisit in a fairly periodic manner so that you know where you stand with regards to your show and the sponsors that you are chasing. And a very easy way to apply this prior to chasing sponsorship is going to be through your guest profiles. Who are you bringing on as a guest on your episode? The guest should meet your compass, your ethics, and all of that, because once you get through the process of screening and selecting people who fit what the podcast is, it becomes easy to transfer that skill and knowledge to applying that to to sponsors as well. All right, next slide. Okay, so we're getting to the tail end almost. At this point, any questions, anything that's come up, any bits you like myself or Barbara to touch on, any comments, any experience? A bit of an open floor, so let's hear it.
Hi, my name is Molly. I'm the CEO of AfroPods. In our group here, we had a lot of podcasters, people who work in the industry, community builders. And so it's not necessarily a question toward this, but more so since there's so many different people in the room, I'm curious from podcasters, what is it that you're looking for, right? From the solutions that exist on the continent, and like, how can everyone who's part of the infrastructure of podcasting help support you guys?
Thank you, Molly. So the podcasters we have in this space, what do you need? How will support, what does support look like? Anybody wants to have a go? I mean, those who have podcasts, okay.
Hi, my name is Michelle. I don't have a podcast, but I help produce 2 podcasts in Kenya. One that is centered around music, mostly Kenyan music, and pushing Kenyan artists to different audiences, and one that is centered around Kenyan art. And the problem with both podcasts is a lot of times we have to collaborate with bigger platforms like what Calvin has, or go back to traditional radio for us to get even a fraction of the attention that the music needs. And it becomes extremely difficult to lean on podcasting, which is a big platform and ecosystem, to use it as a primary tool for music marketing. There's a lot of stories and information and tips and tricks that artists have that they can share to a bigger audience to help growing artists or to reach bigger artists that just gets lost in the translation. It just feels like any other podcast that is around. So if there's ways to put investment to further amplify and showcase African music, Kenyan music, through storytelling away from the music itself, that would be very useful. That looks like putting together grown podcasters or established podcasters with growing artists to just ask all the relevant questions, using existing artists to create tunes or music as a background or backdrop of most of the podcast intros and outros. It also looks like using existing artist portfolios as collaborative platforms, not just people who come once in a while. I think that's the support I'd ask for.
Hi, Jasmine again. It's so great to hear from all of you. So something that I've noticed, I'm not in the African podcast space yet, but something that I've noticed is that you all don't know each other that much. And I feel like a platform could really help build a community of creators. And I want to tell you all, so there is a listserv, like a Google Mail group for African audio producers where they're helping each other. And if you want to get on that, please get in touch with me. I'll try to get you all on that, because when I said I'm coming to Nairobi, it was crickets. And now I'm sitting here surrounded by all of these amazing producers. So I want you to get in touch with me. I'll put you on that list. That's one thing. I think the community and a support system amongst each other is a big, big deal. The other thing that this brings is ways to collaborate with each other. So you can push each other, do cross posts across the podcast, because podcasting has a marketing problem and we all hate marketing. So the least we do is we put out these clips that we just saw. And there's only a certain reach that they can have. So something else that we could do and that a platform could be super, super useful for is something that Pocket Casts also does, is where you bring on or invite kind of like influencers in the space or bigger names that people actually follow to do curated lists of podcasts that they love. You know, these are my 3 tips that I've sent to my friends this month. And that way we can also get some reach and actually meet the people where they're at, because recommendation, if you don't have, a Spotify style AI in the background, then this is a really great way to keep it human. And because I'm looking for African podcasts, I've been looking for them and I'm not really, this is on me. This is probably on me. But I would love to have a place to find them all, even a newsletter, a Substack, somebody. So if anybody feels called on, start a Substack, please. I want to know what are the coolest things in audio coming from the continent. So I hope that helps. Would be a solution.
So we have one here, and then I'll come to you.
Mine was a question. I wanted to find out, what are some of the signs that a podcast has sold out?
Kev, you might answer that.
The pressure. I'm not sure how I got singled out to this one. Oh, sorry. Sheesh. Okay, signs that I would say that a podcast is sold out. I think it essentially going away from what feels natural to the host or what the community wants in exchange for money. So let's say that the podcast was initially talking about blue pens. And then, a couple of sponsors came in who were talking about planting trees. And now the podcast has changed and there's no more engagement in the community authentically. And the kind of like the premise behind the show has changed. I would say that those are the ways in which that happens. But I think also there's also the shift in the behavior from the host can also be a sign of selling out. So selling out doesn't have to be monetarily. You know what I mean? It can also be from a mindset perspective. Oh, we're too good, so now we don't relate or engage with our audience in the ways that we used to. So I think there's multiple ways that you can, and I wouldn't necessarily say selling out, but perhaps losing your way, right? And so hopefully, and sometimes we do see people who kind of lose their way and then they come back to home base. And I think that's really important because a lot of times you can get distracted and then your core base, they stay with you and then they help you to become regrounded, which is why earlier when we were talking about the juggling, the engagement with your community is so, so important because that is what keeps you honest. That's what keeps you home.
But they said, I don't want to share the name of a podcast. I don't want to give anybody that I know as a friend my podcast. I just want it to find its audience, right? And that got me thinking, do we make podcasts because we want to grow an audience, or do we make podcasts because of, our interest in making that podcast, because it's in our soul, basically? So that's my question.
Okay. Mine was not a question. Mine was just a contribution. And I just want to build upon what she said in terms of I am a firm believer in building for Africa. And we are going to be launching a report in the afternoon, and radio is still king in terms of in terms of accessing information and content. A lot of children and young people, they're still relying on radio. Okay, so if you're going to build podcast platforms, how are we going to make sure that they are low bandwidth, accessible without internet? Okay, for those ones who understand, you don't want to be on a podcast and you go, that just goes dead on you. So for me, that's a challenge, and I love the idea of a community. So I think ourselves in Total News and probably radio workshops, I think we are the only ones who produce content podcasts for children by children. So we do not produce for children. Children actually produce for themselves. So sometimes it's such an uphill task to market it. So it would be really nice to have a community. And Eric here does an amazing job. He's the one who does the production. So it would be nice to have a community that we get that kind of support. And please go subscribe to our podcast. Thank you, on Spotify. Thank you.
Okay, so we've been given the 5-minute sign. So going to quickly answer the questions, but I'll also say we can hang around and then also just chat a bit after we are done. The question about the Kenyan music and songs, I would say if you can, reach out to some of the more popular podcasts that you know. Because, for example, our Sincerely Accra podcast, what we do is towards the end of the show, we have artists that send us their songs. And these are up-and-coming new sounds. And we play it towards the end. And I think for most podcast shows, they wouldn't mind having content that they can play towards the end, because then you are also featuring and also just growing the culture space as well. With the question that Eric asked in terms of, are you doing it for the love of the game, or are you doing it to extend your reach and earn money? To be very honest, that's a very personal question. Sometimes you start out wanting to do it for the love of the game, and then you realize that there are financial obligations that you have to meet, not just to yourself, but to your team. So then it shifts. Sometimes you come in wanting to do it because you're trying to monetize it, and you realize, oh my God, this community is so awesome. I don't mind just producing content if it stays just here. So it's going to be something that slides, that ebbs and flows, that we all have to kind of figure out on an individual basis. But like Kevin said, it's important to always stay grounded and sort of going back to base. Barbara?
Yes. So as Kojo said, we're still around after. I know that you're all probably very hungry and ready to go. But come and talk to us if you still have questions. For those who want, we have brought MethodKits to take away, so physical cards for everyone. Otherwise, all the cards are under Creative Commons and downloadable for free in all 45 languages. And I mentioned 10 more to come. I mentioned also all the African languages. And we have here Irene Mbaya, who was one of the co-authors of the Swahili kit. And that's something that is very important to us, that the English version was a collaborative effort of 20 podcasters from all over the world, and that every language that we add is much more than a translation. We always want to replicate this collaborative aspect by having 3 colleagues working together. And yeah, you can download everything from our website, and we look forward. Oh, one more slide. We do have something called a pod circle.
Next slide, please.
And Kwadzo was actually our guest. When was it? In November?
Yes.
Yeah. And last week we had a colleague from Luxembourg. So every month we invite a podcaster from a different part of the world to tackle a different topic around podcasting. Last week, for example, it was inclusion and work in podcasting. So there too, I highly encourage you to join this pod circle, and we look forward to staying in touch. Thank you very much for making the time today to join this session. And thank you to my wonderful, to Kwadzo. Thank you very much. Oh, one more before I forget. Jasmine was talking about how important recommendations are and knowing what to listen to. We have a board here, my favorite podcast. Seeing that we've got such a brain power in this room, please, if you have the time, if you're not starving too much, leave one favorite podcast that you have on this board. We would be immensely grateful, and we'll share that with you as well. Thank you.